Violet Evergarden is a beautiful, beautiful anime. You can see it in the clips that are playing of it now, and what makes it Christian is its exploration of identity and finding purpose and meaning, as well as coming to terms with one's sin for this very young girl. It's a story set in the aftermath of this world's version of World War I. The whole continent's been set on fire, just like Europe saw during the early 20th century, and we see in this quaint port city of Leiden the recovery of society after such a traumatic event. It's also such a cool thing to see throughout this series how not only the nation's rebuilding themselves, but for Violet Evergarden, our main protagonist, having to rebuild herself after losing the identity she had over the course of the war. Oh, and fan service warning, by the way, one of the main characters dresses immodestly, so you've been warned. So the story of this anime centers around this 14-year-old girl, obviously named Violet Evergarden. We meet her while she's recovering in hospital. She's just fought in the final battle of the war, and we see her trying to adapt to civilian life. Now, the reason why Violet's such a compelling character is because we know as Christians that something's gone horribly wrong with this young girl, to have had no family, to have been forced to fight in a bloody war, and to have gone through so much, to be made in the image of God. We hear that in church so many times, but its significance is made greater about this anime because for a person to not comprehend forgiveness or kindness or love makes us uncomfortable, because these attributes of God should be reflected amongst his image bearers. Now, there are actually places in the Bible that talk about having a seared conscience, which Violet does possess. She can't comprehend morality, social norms, and there's something just special as you watch this anime and see her grow into a more rounded individual. She starts off as this quite blunt, uncaring, and directionless individual, and it's absolutely tragic. The reason why she's like this is because we learn later in the series about the great atrocities and mass killings that she's committed as a child soldier. To have grown up committing so much sin, it's no surprise she's got a seared conscience. So it's all the more greater, without getting into some major spoilers, when Violet realizes the magnitude of her sin. Her hands are stained with the blood of everyone she's killed, and she absolutely falls apart when she comprehends this. That's why Jesus talks about the poor in spirit and those who mourn as being blessed in the Beatitudes, because we cannot come to God with a seared conscience. We can only seek forgiveness upon recognition of how great the depth of our sin is. It makes the sacrifice of Jesus and the great display of his love for us on the cross so impactful, for which the only correct response for us is to come to God in repentance and in faith. Unfortunately, in the atheist worldview, I don't actually see how one could justify the feelings of love and repentance other than simply being a matter of personal experience. However, under the Christian worldview, there's a reason why someone like Violet now gets to live. There's a reason why she is able to surrender her past and leave it. It's because love and forgiveness can change the human heart, and Violet's sin, while it cannot be repaid by her own good works, can be set aside because Christ has already paid the price. While this anime can try its best operating with the atheist worldview on how someone can come to terms with their sin, and the answer given in the show can't really go beyond like having to deal with this on a personal level, we can still see these Christian virtues of forgiveness and grace being granted to this young girl. On identity, Violet Evergarden also shows that what we build our identity upon needs to be greater than ourselves. If we build our identities and foundations upon our work or anything else that is self-centered and not greater than ourselves, what happens when we stop working? When our health declines and we become less able to do things? For Violet, whose work was molded around the war and being dependent on the superior's orders, what happens when the war ends? What happens for Violet when her major is missing in action and she can no longer take her orders? This anime proposes that working for other people and working as a part of a collective goal, that for Violet being to work at this postal company, is much better. Violet finds work in writing letters for people in a period where a vast portion of the population is illiterate and cannot write. Violet works in service to others by translating one's emotions and ramblings into a coherent and beautifully written letter. It really is the cutest part of this anime, and it's crazy that these stories of writing letters to other people has been made so connectable and relatable to us living in a modern age where none of us have written a letter. However, the Christian worldview challenges this notion of identity, because what happens in the face of technological change in this industry is made redundant. What happens when your co-workers leave for other jobs, upper management changes, and you get a dull boss, etc., etc. So God becomes our ultimate ideal to strive towards, to live our lives as living sacrifices to the Lord, as Paul writes in the book of Romans. That's not to say that Violet Evergarden doesn't actually provide an okay building block of society to inspire work in service of others rather than for oneself. And of course, Violet does start this job having a self-centered ambition as to why she becomes a person who writes letters for others in the first place. Though, as this monotone alone girl who lacks emotions starts to meet more and more people, she does eventually gain an ambition which is greater than herself. Then for the Christian, it is for us to extend that message and pursue godly ambition instead. Now, I might talk about the movie they did afterwards, and I don't know how they did it, but Kyoto Animations somehow made it more beautiful than the series in both animation and story. So let me know in the comments if you want to hear me talk about it. Though those same themes of forgiveness, grace, and identity still carry forward into the movie, and it is with these themes that I'm happy to say that Violet Evergarden is a Christian anime. If you are looking for a very similar show to this, So No Frieren is actually its closest substitute, for which my video on it is right here.